Welcome back to Old Coin Adventures. A 1970 Washington quarter can look completely ordinary at first, but sometimes one small detail can change the entire story of a coin. And that's exactly what makes this quarter so interesting. Thousands of people may have handled these coins over the years, without ever realizing that certain examples can be worth far more than 25 cents. The surprising part is, you don't have to be an expert collector to start looking for the clues. There are specific areas on this quarter that can tell you whether you're looking at an everyday coin, a desirable collector piece, or something much harder to find. But here's where things get interesting. The most important clue isn't necessarily the date. And it isn't simply the fact that the coin was made in 1970. There's another detail you need to examine closely, because one small difference can completely change the story of this quarter. In this video, we're going to examine those details carefully, look at what experienced collectors actually search for, and separate genuine errors and varieties from the damage that can make an ordinary coin look unusual. And I'm saving the most important part for later, because by the end, you'll know what a valuable 1970 Washington quarter can actually be worth, how much a real example has sold for at auction, and where you can have your coin professionally examined or potentially sell it if you've discovered something special. So keep your attention on the details, because once we take a closer look at this 1970 quarter, you may never look at an ordinary quarter quite the same way again. Now let's take a closer look at the 1970 Washington quarter, because the first thing you need to understand is that not every quarter from this year is rare. Millions were produced for circulation, which means most examples you come across will still be ordinary coins. But coin collecting isn't always about how old a coin is. It's about what makes one example different from the millions of others. And that's exactly what we're going to look for here. Start with the date. Look closely at the numbers 1, 9, 7, and 0. Make sure the date appears normally struck, and pay attention to anything that looks unusual around the numbers. But don't stop there. Turn the coin over and examine the reverse. Look at the lettering, the eagle, the surrounding fields, and the overall sharpness of the design. Then check the mint mark. The mint mark can help identify where the quarter was produced, but by itself, it doesn't make the coin rare or valuable. This is one of the biggest mistakes people make when searching for valuable coins. They see a particular year or mint mark online, find an expensive listing, and immediately assume their own coin must be worth the same amount. That's not how the coin market works. The condition and exact characteristics of the individual coin matter. So now, let's talk about condition. Look carefully at Washington's portrait. Examine the hair, cheek, jawline, and the open areas around the design. If the coin has been circulating for decades, you'll usually see scratches, contact marks, dull areas, and other signs of wear. But if the details are unusually sharp and the surfaces are remarkably clean, the coin becomes much more interesting. And this is where good lighting can make a huge difference. Hold the quarter under a bright light and slowly tilt it from different angles. You're looking for unusual details that may not be visible when the coin is sitting flat. Now, let's talk about errors. This is one of the most exciting parts of coin hunting, but it's also where you need to be careful. A genuine mint error happens during the manufacturing process, while damage usually happens after the coin has entered circulation. That difference is extremely important. A scratch across the design isn't automatically an error. A dent on the edge doesn't automatically make the coin rare. And discoloration or damage caused by chemicals isn't necessarily a valuable mint mistake. So when you find something unusual, don't immediately assume you've discovered a rare coin. Instead, compare it with a normal 1970 Washington quarter and ask yourself whether the feature looks like something that could have happened during production. Look closely at the date, lettering, rim, edge, and major design elements. And pay special attention to anything that appears doubled, missing, unusually struck, or completely out of place. This is where magnification becomes extremely useful. A simple magnifying glass can reveal details that are almost impossible to see with the naked eye. And sometimes, one small detail is enough to turn an ordinary-looking coin into something collectors want to investigate. There's another important factor we can't ignore. The mint. A 1970 quarter can come from different mints, and collectors may pay very different prices depending on the exact coin, its condition, and whether it has a recognized variety or error. So make sure you identify the coin correctly before trying to determine its value. And remember, don't judge the quarter simply because it has been sitting in an old collection for decades. A coin can be old and still be common. At the same time, a coin that looks ordinary can become highly desirable if it has the right combination of rarity, condition, and collector demand. That's what makes coin hunting so exciting. You never really know what you're looking at until you examine the details. So we've established what to check: the date, the mint mark, the condition, the surfaces, the design details, and most importantly, any feature that could indicate a genuine mint error or unusual variety. But now comes the question that matters most. If you actually find a valuable 1970 Washington quarter, how much could it be worth? Could it be worth a few dollars? Hundreds? Or potentially much more? And what has a real 1970 quarter actually sold for? That's where the story gets much more interesting. Because in part 2, we're going to reveal the documented auction value, explain why some examples bring much higher prices than ordinary quarters, and I'll show you what you should do if you think you've found one. We'll also cover where you can have it authenticated and the best places to consider selling it. So, now that you know what to look for, let's find out what a special 1970 Washington quarter can actually be worth. Now let's get to the part every collector wants to know. What is a 1970 Washington quarter actually worth? The answer depends completely on the coin you're holding. A normal circulated 1970 quarter is generally not a fortune. But when you move into exceptional condition, recognized varieties, or genuine mint errors, the value can change dramatically. And this is where real auction records become important. One documented example is a 1970 Washington quarter graded MS-67 by PCGS, which sold at auction for approximately $25,000. That's a remarkable difference from the coin's original 25-cent face value. But there's an even more important lesson here. That doesn't mean every 1970 quarter is worth hundreds of dollars. The coin that brought that price was an exceptionally high-grade example. Its condition is a major part of the story. This is why you should never look at an auction record and immediately assume your own coin is worth the same amount. Instead, compare the exact characteristics. Is your coin circulated or uncirculated? Are the surfaces clean? Are the design details sharp? Does the coin have a recognized variety? Could there be a genuine mint error? And has that feature been professionally confirmed? Those questions matter. Now let's talk about one of the most interesting possibilities with 1970 quarters. Some 1970s Washington quarters are known with unusual wrong planchet errors, including examples struck on planchets intended for other denominations. These are extremely different from an ordinary quarter, and genuine examples can be worth dramatically more. One famous category involves 1970s quarters struck on Canadian quarter planchets, and another involves quarters struck on smaller planchets intended for other coins. When a major error like this is genuine and authenticated, the value can move far beyond normal collector prices. That's why authentication is so important. If you believe your 1970 quarter has an unusual error, don't clean it, don't polish it, and don't try to alter anything about the coin. Keep it exactly as you found it. Take clear photographs of both sides, photograph the edge, and capture close-ups of the date, mint mark, and unusual feature. Then get a professional opinion. A reputable coin dealer can be a good starting point for an initial evaluation. For a potentially valuable coin, professional grading and authentication can provide much stronger evidence of what you actually have. And if the coin is confirmed as a significant rarity, selling it through the right channel becomes just as important as identifying it. So where can you sell a valuable 1970 Washington quarter? For an ordinary or moderately valuable coin, a reputable local coin dealer may be the simplest option. You can also look at established online coin marketplaces, provided you understand the fees, authentication process, and buyer protection involved. For a rare, high-grade, or major mint error coin, a respected auction house may be a better choice because it can put the coin in front of serious collectors who understand what they're buying. And here's one rule you should always remember. Never confuse an asking price with a completed sale. Someone can list a quarter for $10,000, but that doesn't prove the coin is worth $10,000. A documented auction result is much stronger evidence because it shows what a buyer actually paid. And now you know what to do if you find one. Get it checked. Get it authenticated if necessary. Find real comparable sales. And only then decide where to sell it. Because sometimes, the difference between an ordinary 25-cent quarter and a valuable collector coin isn't the year printed on it. It's the detail almost everyone else missed.